Super nice to see so many familiar faces. It's been a while since I've been at Disrupt Asia. The picture that you see on the left-hand side, I think it was either from 17 or 2016, where I'll paint a little bit of a story. I've talked about this story in certain levels of details, but I wanted to share some information this time around that I've probably never shared before, partly because of NDAs and all of that stuff, but now I'm like, you know what, sue me. Yeah, so I was here back in 2016 as a startup. We had just launched a small business. We hadn't really figured out what the business is. We had started a small business, a company called Surge, not necessarily knowing what we were doing. We were a small digital marketing firm, and we had really just started to find our feet. 2014, it was an idea. It was a YouTube channel. We were playing video games, monetizing content, and we figured out that it worked. And 2014 was about 11, 12 years ago. As a 18-year-old in Sri Lanka, doing $12,000 in revenue is a really fun exercise. You kind of think that you're on top of the world. You have a lot of passion, a lot of drive. Looking back at it, it's not a lot, but we figured out a small business. As time went on, we realized that there's a lot more potential, there's a lot more scope, and we kept on innovating and figuring out what we are. We were a digital marketing firm that understood content creation and content monetization. And when I came to this stage in Disrupt Asia 2016, we were a small business that was doing $60,000 a year in revenue. Now, $60,000 is not a lot. It's a single check for most businesses these days. But we had an idea, and we didn't really know what we were doing, but we knew we were moving in the right direction. And that's when we ran into a couple of investors. By the end of 2016 and towards the beginning of 2017, we raised a little bit of seed money. $364,000. On a valuation basis, on $60,000 trailing, that was actually really good. The reason why the valuation was so high that most people don't know is an accident. We were speaking to our investors. They wanted a majority stake in our business. And it seemed like a really bad idea for most cases, but I decided, you know what, let's take it. The reason for that is we had no validation. We didn't know what we were doing. Even though we had some revenue, we were barely profitable. We hadn't done our books. It was a complete mess. And we had an incredibly inexperienced founder, me. The company we were speaking to said, you know what, it's fine, let's write a check. How much do you value the company at? I came up with 350 grand. I thought that was reasonable. I get a term sheet a week later with the number 364 for 51%. And I'm like, wait a second. In my head, when I said $350,000, I meant $350,000 market cap, not for the 50%. But the advisor at the time told me to shut up and sign the term sheet, which I did. Now, we had a bit of a hockey stick, but what happened in the next 8, 9 years was literally nothing short of remarkable. The $180,000, the $364,000 check turned into this. The business grew. We went from 180 to doubling and tripling and doubling year on year to where we are today. 2.5 months ago, we concluded a transaction where we repurchased equity from our investors. We completely bought them out, which is a very interesting thing because in Sri Lanka, you don't have a lot of exits. But turns out there's more than one way to exit. You don't have to exit to another fund. You can always do a share buyback. And on a simple dollar-denominated point of view, we generated 1,550% for our investors. On a rupee term, that's probably about 3,500% over a 6-7 year window. Not too bad. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this and why this is important is because this is what our country lacks. Risk capital. It's kind of that engine that drives entrepreneurship. It's the kind of money that someone throws at a founder, an idea, because they have a gut feeling that the person that they're talking to probably has a shot at something. It's unsecured. Could probably, in most cases, blows up completely and generates nothing for the investors. But it's the kind of thing that drives innovation. It's the kind of thing that creates opportunity. And it's the kind of thing that we need. Because, yes, we generated the 1,500% returns for the investors, but there's more to that story. What we also did is that $364,000 check today employs 500 highly paid people within this country. And that doesn't get captured in the return on investment calculation for the investor. We have supported, the typical person that works within our business is usually the breadwinner in their family. So effectively, we support about 1,000 people through our employees, through our vendors, through our partners. And that comes from that $364,000 check, as well as the $40 million of cumulative revenue that we've brought into the country still stems from that single $364,000 check. If you look at it from the Sri Lanka lens, for every dollar that they have invested, that they have generated 100x return for the country in terms of foreign remittances, in terms of workforce, and in terms of economic activity. And this is what I really want to focus on, right? We are here for 4 days. We're talking about all sorts of things. Everyone is passionate about ideas. But where does all of these things end up in, and why is it so important? For those of you who don't know, this block is the epicenter of venture capital. A place called Sand Hill Road in California. It's this tiny strip of land. It's probably the most expensive real estate you can find on Earth. And the reason for that is it's really where a lot of this risk capital comes from. If you look at any of the names that you know today, companies like Facebook, Tesla, SpaceX, Airbnb, Foursquare, Groupon, Instagram, most of these businesses really come from a very few incredibly powerful firms like Andreessen Horowitz and Kleiner Perkins that have really accelerated the growth of all of these early stage companies. That's the commonality that you don't see in Sri Lanka. You have a few stories of a few startups that have done well, but if I were to ask someone in the audience to raise their hand and name 3 people or 4 companies that would write checks at an institutional level or a systematic level, you can't find any. And the reason that network is so important and the reason why they're so close to each other is that it creates incredible talent and capital density, which Sri Lanka does not have. Everyone in startups knows this picture. This is the PayPal mafia, the early stage group of employees that started, founded, built, and scaled this business. Now, the reason a lot of these names are familiar, some of them are very politicized now, and some of them are probably doing more harm than good, but let's ignore that for a second. The PayPal mafia ended up building most of the innovative technology companies that sit today. A single group of people with access to the same resources ended up building YouTube, LinkedIn, SpaceX, Palantir, launched the Founders Fund, and created this incredible space. And the way that I see it is that this is what Sri Lanka lacks. We don't have density. You have these really good companies in Sri Lanka that have now started to IPO, like the likes of PickMe, who gave a few talks today. We're not at the stage yet where there's a few people that was involved in the early stages of PickMe, left the company, and are now starting tons of other businesses. We need to get there. Other countries quickly picked up on the fact that this works in the Valley. And what you can see is that's when venture capital started to boom. China started writing incredibly more frequent checks, both in terms of the number of checks as well as the capital quantity, once they figured out that this talent density is incredibly important. You can see from about 2010 onwards, that spike completely growing up. Now, China did a lot of this from its domestic savings, but different countries took different approaches. If you look at Singapore, which we talk about all the time, took a completely different approach. Singapore looked at venture capital as a percentage of their GDP, and they got government incentive and support to write check. They had funds of funds. They had a lot of access to capital, they had infrastructure, they had the right resources to build a lot of these things. Even the businesses that we are in, we get capital from Singapore. We launch businesses there because I see some of our investors in Singapore nodding their head. And they built outliers because they understood the importance of this density. They understood the value of risk capital. And those outliers are incredibly important. Now, the problem for us, unfortunately, is that Sri Lankans hate risk. My mom and dad are in the audience today. And they are professionals. They've worked their entire life. And they've, until very recently, only had one asset class, a fixed deposit. A guaranteed form of return that generates anywhere between 6% to 12% that a bank takes, which is collateralized, which is secured, which is guaranteed, which is used as a deposit in order to lend. You have no capital risk, but you also have very little return. And we need to change that because at the end of the day, the reason we are here is to participate in taking that risk. Because when I look back at the last 12 years, I am incredibly grateful for that one check that we got because we've been able to turn it to a lot more. We've actually created a network of effects. We've built and written checks for over 50 other businesses in all sorts of the parts of the world, some of which we have co-founded ourselves, some of which we've invested in and on the side with other partners. And today, it directly employs thousands of people and have a combined economic activity of over $100 million. And it really still comes down to that single risk someone took because as a founder, it's somewhat your requirement to pay it forward. Now, I know we have a lot of investors here today, and there's a lot of people that are looking for access to capital. So I really only have one core message because you guys know all this stuff, right? Like this is mostly a networking event and this is not that you need to understand what venture capital is and what a startup is and none of these things are important. What really needs to happen is someone needs to drive that social lubricant so that someone who is on the edge of writing that check decides, you know what, I may lose money. It's okay. I may participate with another fund. I may participate with a group of people, build a consortium, and I may write a check to a founder that probably hasn't had it all figured out yet. But that's okay. But if we are to drive the growth that Sri Lanka needs in the next decade or two, it's not going to come from just industrial growth. It has to come from entrepreneurship. And it has to come with the likes of risk capital supporting all of these innovations that are here in the room today and all of the innovations that you're going to meet over the next coming days. So with that, I don't want to take too much time. I know it's been a long journey and we have a few more days to go through. So thank you all for coming. The one takeaway, I hope everyone takes a few more risks and helps everyone push this forward. Thank you everyone for coming for the conference of Disrupt Asia. It was an absolute pleasure to have you all here.